My name is Kira Hogan, 29 years old, a sergeant in the United States Army, and I was standing in my parents' backyard in Ohio in my uniform, watching them hand my sister Ashley the keys to a brand new SUV. It was Memorial Day, the day I was on leave. They didn't even turn around when I announced I'd just been promoted to Sergeant First Class and received new deployment orders. My father clapped me on the shoulder, not to congratulate me, but to say, "Go flip the burgers, champ. They're about to burn." My mother laughed. "Don't be jealous, Kira. Ashley needs this car for her work. You have the army to take care of you." They had no idea that, in the pocket of my uniform, was a letter that could change the fate of this entire family. Let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you've also given everything, only to be treated like the help in your own home. The smell hits you first. It's the official scent of a Midwestern summer. The thick, sweet, tomato-heavy aroma of Kansas City-style barbecue sauce caramelizing over charcoal. That, and the smell of freshly cut grass. I stood in the humid Ohio air of my parents' backyard, the rough, familiar fabric of my OCPs, my combat uniform, feeling stiff and out of place. I'd been on leave for less than 12 hours. I chose this day, Memorial Day, to come home. The irony wasn't lost on me, a day to honor service. And here I was, ready to share news I was genuinely proud of. News I'd worked years to earn. The air was filled with the sounds of chaos. Not danger, but family. My nieces and nephews were screaming, chasing each other with water guns. From the living room, through the open screen door, I could hear the drone of a sports commentator. My dad, Mike, was watching a Buckeyes game. A replay from last fall, probably. But he was just as invested, yelling at the TV as if it were live. My mom, Karen, was fluttering around the patio table, rearranging bowls of potato salad and chips. And then there was my sister, Ashley. She was holding court on the deck, phone in one hand, a hard seltzer in the other, laughing loudly about some online drama. I felt a familiar sense of displacement. In the Army, I'm a non-commissioned officer. I'm Sergeant First Class Hogan. I'm a leader. My skills are in logistics, organization, and clear communication. Here, those skills didn't apply. Here, I was just Kira. The responsible one. The invisible cog that kept the family machine from rattling apart. I was the one who refilled the ice, who noticed the propane tank on the grill was low, who quietly cleaned up the spills no one else saw. I was the family's designated problem solver, which really just meant I was the designated background character. But today I thought would be different. I had real news. Significant news. I found a lull in the chaos, just as my dad walked out to grab another beer. My mom was right there. It was the perfect moment. I stood up straight, my posture instinctively shifting. I used the clear, projecting voice I used to address my soldiers. "Hey everyone, I have some good news." The noise died down for a split second. I had their attention. "I just wanted to let you know," I started, but before I could finish, Ashley's voice cut through the air from the deck, sharp and annoyed. "Kira, get me a beer, will you? I'm in the middle of something." I flinched, not at the command, but at the timing. It was so effortless, the way she dismissed me. I kept my eyes on my parents. I wouldn't be deterred. I took a breath and spoke louder, clearer. "I've been promoted to Sergeant First Class." I paused, letting the words sink in. "And I've been reassigned. I'll be deploying to Fort Bragg." Silence. Not a respectful silence. Not a, "we're processing this" silence. It was a void. And into that void, Ashley shrieked, a sound so high-pitched it made the dog bark. "Oh my God, you guys, I just closed a $500 sale." It was like a switch had been flipped. The screen door slammed open as my dad, his beer forgotten, rushed onto the deck. "Atta girl, Ashley, $500. My mom was right behind him, clapping her hands. "Oh, sweetie, that's wonderful. See? I told you that new online course would pay off." They were hugging her, crowding around her, as she showed them her phone screen. The sound of their cheers and whooping completely drowned out the significance of what I'd just said. My promotion. My deployment. It didn't just get ignored. It evaporated. It had never existed. The background noise of the yard rushed back in, the kids screaming, the sizzle of the grill, the faint drone of the Ohio State game. No one, not one person, answered me. I just stood there, my hands feeling heavy and useless at my sides. I said I got promoted, I repeated, but my voice was smaller now. The command tone was gone. It was just Kira. My dad finally turned, hearing my voice, but not my words. He walked over and gave me a quick, obligatory pat on the shoulder. His eyes were already drifting back to the TV. Great, honey, great. He was distracted. Damn it, he suddenly yelled, not at me, but at the screen. That was a fumble. Are these refs blind? He was so much more passionate about a football game, a rerun of a football game, than my entire career. He looked back at me, his focus shifting to the grill. Now, go flip the burgers, he said, the casual authority returning. They're about to burn, champ. Champ. That name. It wasn't a term of endearment, it was a dismissal. It was the nickname he'd given me when I was 10 and tried to help him fix the kitchen sink, only to end up flooding the bathroom floor. He'd used it ever since, always with that same dismissive pat whenever I was trying to do something he considered pointless or in the way. It was a pat on the head that felt like a shove. I looked over at the deck. Ashley was still wrapped in Mom's arms, soaking in the praise. She caught my eye over Mom's shoulder. She saw me, just standing there by the grill. And she gave me that little half smirk. A quick, knowing, victorious little smile. It said everything. I win, you lose. Now get back to your station. The sense of peace I'd felt just minutes before was gone, replaced by a cold, familiar ache. As if to punctuate the moment, my mom, Karen, finally pulled away from Ashley and spotted me. She smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was a put-you-to-work smile. She motioned with her head toward the patio table. Kira, honey, be useful, she called out. Ashley's friend spilled some ketchup by the cooler. Go clean it up before it stains the concrete. I didn't say anything. I just moved. I walked past the grill, grabbed a wad of paper towels from the table, and went to the cooler. So there I was, a 29-year-old sergeant first class in the United States Army, a woman who had led soldiers on deployment, on Memorial Day, in my uniform, on my knees, wiping up a sticky red puddle of Heinz ketchup from the patio. And it was right then, while I was kneeling, that my dad cleared his throat for a real announcement. All right, everyone, quiet down, he boomed. Your mother and I have a little surprise. Ashley, sweetie, you've been working so hard on your new business. My mom ran inside and came back out, dangling a small set of keys. We are so proud of you, Mom gushed. So we wanted to get you something to celebrate your success. They pointed to the driveway. Parked right behind my dusty Toyota Corolla was a brand new metallic gray Ford Explorer, the quintessential American family SUV, complete with a giant red bow on the hood. Ashley began to cry, the fake high-pitched sobs of someone who has perfected the art of receiving. Oh my God, you didn't! I can't believe it! They all rushed to the driveway, hugging, crying, celebrating. I, who had just returned from a combat zone, who had just earned a rank that takes years of dedication and sacrifice. I got a nod and an order to flip burgers. She, who sold, whatever it was she sold online, she got a $30,000 car. It wasn't just emptiness I felt. It was a cold, hard, familiar ache. The ache of injustice. I stood up slowly, the damp, sticky paper towel still clutched in my fist. I looked at the new SUV, at my beaming sister, at my proud parents who hadn't glanced my way once, and a single, cold question cut right through my chest. Why? Why is it always like this? That question, why is it always like this, hung in the air of the humid Ohio night. The party had died down. The new Ford Explorer was parked, gleaming, in the driveway. The smell of Kansas City barbecue sauce had been replaced by the scent of citronella candles and stale beer. I had done my duty, cleaned the grill, packed the leftovers, and retreated. I was in my childhood bedroom. It was a time capsule. The walls were still the same pale lavender I'd picked out when I was 12. And staring down at me from the wall above my dresser was a faded poster of NSYNC, their frosted tips and matching pleather outfits, a relic of 1999. Justin Timberlake was perpetually 18, and I was perpetually stuck in this role. The injustice of the day, the humiliation of kneeling in my uniform to wipe up ketchup while my sister was handed a $30,000 SUV, was a fresh wound. But the question, why, that had opened up all the old ones. I sat on the edge of the twin bed, my phone in my hand. I had to make this real. I had to give them one last chance to see me. I opened the family group chat. My fingers were steady, my training taking over. I typed a message that was as clear and concise as a military situation report. Received official deployment orders. Will report to Fort Bragg, NC on the 15th. I hit send. I watched the screen. One by one, the tiny read receipts popped up under the message. Read by Mom. Read by Dad. Read by Ashley. All three of them had seen it. And then, nothing. The silence from my phone was louder than the crickets outside my window. It was a cold, digital void. I stared at it, my stomach tightening. I counted to 60. Nothing. Then my phone buzzed. My heart leaped. But it wasn't a reply. It was a new post in the chat. From my mom. A picture of the leftover cornbread she'd made. The caption? Came out perfect this time. Resta's baking queen. A minute later, another. From Ashley. A picture of her gripping the steering wheel of the new Explorer, her nails perfectly manicured. The caption? She's a beauty. Boss babe. Blessed. I had just announced I was being deployed, a word that, for a military family, should carry weight. And they replied with cornbread. And a brag. I wasn't just ignored. I was completely invisible. And the bitterness that rose in my throat tasted like ash. Because this silence, this casual erasure of my entire life, it wasn't new. It was a reflex. It was a map of scar tissue. And that cold, digital silence pulled me back, dragging my memory to another day, under a different, suffocating sky. Fort Jackson, South Carolina. The humidity was so thick you drank it. I was 22, standing on the parade field, my freshly pressed dress greens sticking to my back. It was basic training graduation. Thousands of families were in the stands screaming, holding up signs. A sea of joyful noise. And I stood there, scanning that sea, my heart pounding a frantic, hopeful rhythm against my ribs. The ceremony ended. The drill sergeants dismissed us. The sea of families broke onto the field, a wave of hugs and tears. And I just stood there, waiting. 1 hour passed, then 2. My fellow soldiers were leaving with their families, heading off base for the first real meal they'd had in 10 weeks. I just kept standing, a fixed point on an empty field, the scorching sun beating down on me. They showed up 4 hours late. My mom, Karen, got out of the car fanning her face, her first words not, "Congratulations," but, "My God, the humidity here is just criminal." My dad, Mike, just nodded. "You look skinny," he said. I waited for Ashley. She refused to get out of the car. "Why?" "Ashley had a fight with her boyfriend," Mom explained in a huff, as if I were the inconvenience. "She's had a terrible morning, Kira, so don't be difficult. She didn't want to come out." "No congratulations. No, we're proud of you. Just a complaint about the weather and a demand that I manage my sister's romantic drama." Later, at a sad dinner at an Applebee's off the highway, my dad made a toast. "To Ashley," he said, raising his iced tea, "for graduating community college last month. That was a party." Now that was a big deal. I just looked down at my plate. My basic training graduation, 10 weeks of physical and mental hell, was less of a big deal than her associate's degree in communications. The message was clear. Her life was the main event. Mine was the B-plot. That feeling, that sharp, sickening sting of having my accomplishments minimized, it was a pattern. It was the same feeling I'd had just last Christmas. I was stationed at Fort Drum, New York. Fort Drum means snow, brutal, relentless, lake-effect snowstorms that can drop 6 feet in a day. I had 3 precious days of leave. My unit was having a warrior's Christmas for those of us who couldn't fly home. I was looking forward to it. Then Mom called. "Kira, honey, Ashley needs you. Her business is having a huge end-of-year sale, and she's just swamped. She needs help with inventory." So I did it. I cashed in my leave. I missed the party with my friends, my real family. And I drove my Toyota Corolla 10 hours south through a blizzard on the I-90. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel the whole time, fighting the ice on the road. I got to Ohio at 3 a.m., and for 2 straight days I sat in my parents' freezing garage, counting boxes of cheap leggings and essential oils for Ashley's stupid MLM. Ashley, meanwhile, she was at a New Year's Eve party. When I confronted my mom, she just sighed, that weary sigh she reserved for me. "Kira, be reasonable. Ashley has the kids. Her work it's unstable. She needs more help than you. Your job, it's stable. The Army takes care of you." There it was again. My service, my stability, the very things I had worked so hard to achieve were not a source of pride for them. They were an excuse to sideline me. I was the strong one. I was the family's fixer. Ashley was the one who needed to be fixed. It's a heavy label, isn't it? The strong one. It's the one who is expected to absorb all the pain and ask for nothing in return. If you've ever been the strong one in your family, if you know what that burden feels like, please support this story with a like and comment with the word strong below. I just want to know I'm not the only one. But the map of injustice, it went back further than Fort Drum, further than Fort Jackson, the deepest scar, the one that truly defined the dynamic. I was 18. I had just gotten the mail. In my hands was a thick envelope from the University of Notre Dame, a top-tier private university, a place I had dreamed of. I was in. Not just in, I'd gotten a full 4-year ROTC scholarship, my entire life set. A path to becoming an officer, a path out. I ran inside, screaming with joy. That same week, my sister, Ashley, then 21, got a DUI. She had wrapped her car around a telephone pole, her blood alcohol level twice the legal limit. The kitchen, which should have been a place of celebration for me, became a command center for her crisis. I remember standing there, my letter clutched in my hand as my mom sobbed at the kitchen table, the phone to her ear, trying to find a lawyer. That night, she came to my room. She sat on this very bed. "Kira," she said, her eyes red. We can't. The legal fees for Ashley, the fines. I can't handle both right now. I can't handle her crisis and your success." She took my hand. "You're the strong one, Kira. You're the one I don't have to worry about. Just stay in Ohio. Go to the state school. Please, the family needs you." She wasn't asking. She was trading my future for my sister's failure. And I, the good soldier, the fixer, I did it. The next day, I tore up the letter from Notre Dame. Ashley never even knew. Or if she did, she never cared. I looked up from my phone, back at the faded NSYNC poster on my wall. The humiliation of the barbecue. The silent read receipts. The sting of Fort Jackson. The blizzard drive from Fort Drum. The ghost of Notre Dame. They weren't separate incidents. They were all the same incident. A pattern, repeated over and over. I sacrificed everything for them. I tore up that letter. I drove through that blizzard. But as I sat there, invisible in my own childhood room, I had to ask myself, if I don't save myself, who will? That question, if I don't save myself, who will? Was answered not with a thought, but with a sound. Whump! Slam! The heavy rolling metal door of the U-Haul truck slammed shut, the sound echoing in the quiet Ohio morning. That was it. My life, or what little I owned of it, was packed. My Corolla was hitched to the back. In front of me was a 10-hour drive from Ohio to North Carolina. A permanent change of station, or PCS, as the Army calls it. It's a massive undertaking, A military move isn't just changing apartments, it's uprooting your entire existence on someone else's timeline. And I was doing it, like most things, completely alone. I climbed into the stiff, unfamiliar driver's seat of the truck, the cab smelling of stale air and industrial cleaner. I put the key in the ignition. I was just about to turn it when my phone, resting in the cup holder, lit up. Mom. My stomach tightened. Not a goodbye call. It was too late for that. I'd been packing for 2 days and hadn't heard a word. This was a last-minute request. I let it ring 3 times, then answered, my voice flat. I'm in the truck. Kira, perfect. Her voice was harsh, annoyed. I need you to come back this Saturday. I stared at the steering wheel. What? Mom, I'm driving to Fort Bragg right now. I'm literally starting the truck. Don't be dramatic. I'm talking about the weekend, she snapped. Saturday. Ashley has a very important live stream event for her business, and she needs someone to watch the kids. She's counting on this to hit platinum level or whatever. The request was so absurd, so completely disconnected from my reality, that I almost laughed. She wasn't asking me to delay a coffee date. She was ordering me, a sergeant first class, to abandon my report date for a federal military assignment, to babysit. So Ashley could sell leggings on the internet. She hadn't asked how I was. She hadn't asked if I was nervous or scared or sad about leaving. She hadn't said, drive safe. She hadn't even acknowledged the single biggest move of my life. I looked out the windshield at the long, empty street of my childhood. I thought of the question from the night before. Who will save me? The answer was clear. Me. I took a deep breath. I let the training of a decade in the Army settle over me. My voice when it came out was not the voice of her daughter. It was the voice of Sergeant First Class Hogan. Cannot comply, ma'am, I said. The line went completely silent. I could hear the faint, staticky air of her kitchen. What? What did you just say? She finally stammered. The shock in her voice was real. I said, I cannot comply with that request. It is not feasible, I repeated, my voice cold and steady. I am on official orders. I report to Fort Bragg. I will be in North Carolina this Saturday. Kira, I don't know what's gotten into you, she started, her voice beginning to rise into that familiar, guilt-tripping wail. I didn't let her finish. I have to go. And I pressed the red icon on the screen. I hung up on my mother. It was the first time in my 29 years of life that I had ever refused a direct order from her. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt clear. I turned the key. The U-Haul's engine roared to life, and I pulled away from the curb, not even looking in the rearview mirror. The drive was brutal. Driving a U-Haul towing a car is not like driving a sedan. Every gust of wind on the highway feels like a giant hand trying to push you off the road. I crossed the Ohio River, the water a muddy brown below me. I was in West Virginia. The rolling hills of Ohio flattened into the sudden, sharp, winding roads of the Appalachian Mountains. The I-77. The sun went down. The mountains became dark, looming shadows on either side of the highway. The rain started. Not a drizzle, but a cold, driving, relentless downpour. It was 10 o'clock at night. I was somewhere in the middle of nowhere, West Virginia. My knuckles were white, my shoulders ached from fighting the wheel. I was exhausted. And that's when it happened. Whump, flap, 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 flap. The truck shuddered violently. The sound was sickening, a blowout. The rear driver's side tire on the truck. I wrestled the massive vehicle onto the shoulder, my heart pounding against my ribs. I was a mile from the nearest exit, on a dark 2-lane stretch of highway with semi-trucks roaring past, sending up walls of spray that blinded me. I sat there for a second in the flashing glare of my own hazard lights. I could call for roadside assistance. It would take hours. I would be a sitting duck. Or I could do it myself. I grabbed my flashlight and jumped out. The rain hit me instantly, a cold shock. I was soaked in seconds. I found the spare, the jack, the tire iron. They were industrial-sized, heavy, rusted. For the next hour in the pouring rain, by the light of a small flashlight, I changed the tire on a U-Haul. I had to use my entire body weight, grunting and straining, just to loosen the lug nuts. The jack was stiff and caked in mud. At one point, I slipped and slammed my elbow against the pavement, the pain sharp and electric. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just worked. My military training took over. Assess the problem, identify the tools, execute the task. I was covered in mud, grease, and rain. I was colder than I'd ever been. I was completely, utterly alone. But as I tightened the final lug nut and stood up, looking at the flat, ruined tire on the asphalt, a strange feeling washed over me. It was freedom. I had done it. I didn't need my dad. I didn't need to call anyone for help. I had saved myself. I drove the last mile to the exit. I saw the tall, glowing sign of a pilot travel center. It was an oasis. I parked the truck and walked in, dripping water all over the floor. The place smelled of stale coffee, diesel fuel, and hot dogs that had been on the rollers for hours. It was the most beautiful smell in the world. I bought a large black coffee. It was bitter, burnt, and perfect. As I was paying, I saw a small rack of cheap paperbacks, biographies, thrillers, and a small book of quotes from American presidents. I picked it up. My hands were still shaking from the cold and the adrenaline. I flipped through it, and my eyes landed on a passage. It was by Theodore Roosevelt. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. I read it again and again. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena. My father, with his nickname, Champ, he was the critic. My mother, with her demands, she was the critic. My sister, with her smirk, she was the critic. They sat on the sidelines of my life and told me I was doing it wrong. But I was in the arena. I was the one driving the truck. I was the one whose face was marred by rain and grease. I was the one who had just fought a 10-ton truck on the side of a highway. That quote wasn't in comfort. It felt like a new deployment order, a mandate. Continue the mission. I paid for the coffee and the book. I walked back out into the rain, but I didn't feel the cold anymore. I climbed back into the cab, started the engine, and merged back onto the highway. I drove the rest of the night, through the mountains of Virginia, across the border into North Carolina. And as the sun finally broke, painting the sky a pale, hopeful gray, I saw the sign. Fort Bragg, home of the Airborne and Special Operations. I pulled my U-Haul, my life, and my newfound mandate right up to the main gate. I had arrived. I pulled that U-Haul up to the main gate of Fort Bragg, the home of the Airborne and Special Operations, feeling like a refugee. The sun was just a gray promise in the North Carolina sky. I was caked in mud, grease, and the residual grime of a 10-hour drive that felt like a 10-year ordeal. I was exhausted, emotionally raw, and completely alone. My first stop, after signing for my temporary quarters, was to report to my new unit at the Non-Commissioned Officer Academy. I walked into the headquarters, my boots heavy. I was dreading this, more judgment, more proving myself. A man sat behind a large metal desk, his presence filling the room. His uniform was crisp, the AA patch of the 82nd Airborne on his shoulder. He looked up, his eyes sharp and assessing. The name on his chest read, Davis. His rank was Master Sergeant. This was my new boss. Sergeant First Class Hogan? He asked. His voice was a low gravel, a voice that didn't do small talk. Yes, Master Sergeant, I said, standing at attention. Sit, he ordered, not unkindly. He picked up a simple manila folder, my records, my life, reduced to a stack of paper. He was silent for a full minute, just reading. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. I felt that old, familiar dread rise up, that feeling of being weighed, measured, and found wanting. He closed the folder with a soft thud. He looked me right in the eye. You've had an outstanding training record, Hogan, he said, his voice flat and factual. Your evaluations are in the top 5%. You ran one of the best programs at Fort Drum. He leaned forward just a fraction. We've been waiting for you. Welcome to the team. He stood up, stuck out his hand, and gave me one firm shake. Report for PT 0600 Monday. Get your housing sorted. Thank you, Master Sergeant, I managed to say. I walked out of that office into the bright North Carolina sunlight, and I had to lean against the brick wall of the building. My hands were shaking. I was fighting back tears. Welcome to the team. We've been waiting for you. It was a simple, professional courtesy. It was the bare minimum of professional recognition, and it was something my own family had never, ever given me. My father's, great job, champ, flip the burgers. My mother's, the army takes care of you. My sister's, you're just a pawn. Master Sergeant Davis, a complete stranger, had seen my value in 30 seconds, just by looking at the facts. My own parents hadn't seen it in 29 years. For the first time since I'd left Ohio, I didn't feel like I was running. I felt like I had arrived. That one simple moment of recognition was the first seed of healing. It was the permission I needed to build a new life. And I did. 2 years passed. 2 years of breathing North Carolina air. 2 years of not waiting by the phone. 2 years of radio silence from Ohio, a silence I had initiated and enforced. My small apartment in Fayetteville, just off post, stopped being a temporary box to store my gear. It became my home, my base of operations. I painted the walls a calm, steady green. I bought a real sofa. And the walls told the story of who I actually was. The empty spaces where family photos should have been were filled with my life. My NCO of the Quarter Award, my Army Commendation Medal, framed photos of my new team at the academy, covered in mud after a confidence course. A picture of me and my fellow instructors at a local bar, actually smiling. I had a life. A real, full, functioning life. I had put down roots. I started volunteering on my weekends off. It was something to do, a way to connect with the Fayetteville community outside the base. I found a small nonprofit that helped veterans and their spouses transition from military life to civilian careers. They helped with resumes, interview skills, and navigating the VA system. The man who ran it was named Jackson. The first time I met him, he was trying to fix a jammed printer and cursing at it with a creativity that I, as a drill sergeant, had to respect. He was tall, with the kind of quiet, steady confidence that only comes from true hardship. He wore a simple polo shirt and jeans, but he moved with a precision that I recognized. He was a former Green Beret, Special Forces, who had run his last mission in Afghanistan. He'd come home missing his left leg from the knee down. He wasn't bitter. He was focused. He had just channeled his mission-oriented mindset from defeat the enemy to fix this broken system. We started talking. First, about the nonprofit. Then, about life. He, more than anyone, understood the military side of me. But it was what he saw on the other side of me that broke me open. We were sitting in his small office one afternoon, drinking terrible coffee out of a pot that was probably made in 1980. I was telling him, vaguely, about my family. About the pressure. He just listened. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window. You carry the weight of service, Kira, he said, his voice quiet. Everyone in uniform does. We get that. It's the job. He turned to look at me, his eyes holding a profound, heartbreaking understanding. But you carry a second, heavier weight, don't you? I didn't know what to say. It's the weight of not being recognized for it, he said. The weight of having the people who are supposed to be your safe harbor be the ones you need to be saved from. I felt the air leave my lungs. He had just taken 29 years of my pain, my confusion, my rage, and my sorrow. And he had given it a name. He saw me. The real, invisible, broken down on the side of the road me. Jackson became my friend. My first, true friend. He became my inspiration. He never told me to get over it. He just showed me by his own example that your scars don't have to be the end of your story. They can be the start of your new purpose. That November came. Thanksgiving. The thought of going back to Ohio, to that BBQ, to that family. It was impossible. The very idea felt like poison. So I decided to host my own. I sent out a text to my team at the academy, to a few of the soldiers in my volunteer group. If you're not going home, you have a home here, my place. 1400. I'm making a turkey. I called it my Orphan Soldiers Thanksgiving. I thought maybe 3 people would show up. 15 did. My tiny apartment was overflowing. People were sitting on the floor, on the counters, on the arms of the sofa. Jackson came. He brought 2 pies from a local bakery. And he, with his prosthetic leg and his Green Beret confidence, took charge of carving the turkey in my tiny kitchen, complaining loudly that my knives weren't sharp enough. "How do you even command troops with an edge this dull, Hogan?" He'd bellowed, and I'd thrown a dish towel at him. We ate, we drank, we told stories. Not just war stories, but funny stories. Stories about our hometowns. Stories about our terrible first sergeants. We laughed. A deep, genuine, healing laughter. I looked around that room. A room full of misfits. Soldiers from all over the country, from different backgrounds, different races, all of us orphans for the day. And I looked at Jackson, who was in a heated debate with a young specialist about whether the Die Hard movies were Christmas movies. A feeling washed over me. It was warm. It was safe. It was love. This wasn't a performance. No one was screaming about closing a $500 sale. No one was being given an SUV. No one was being ignored. We were just together. I thought of the cold, silent read receipts in my family's group chat. Then I looked at the noise, the warmth, the life in this room. This, I realized as I raised my glass, this was family. That feeling from Thanksgiving, that warmth, that sense of family, it carried me through the winter. For the first time, I felt grounded. I had my team at the academy. I had Jackson. I had a life I had built, not one I had been assigned. The radio silence from Ohio was a blessing. A clean, quiet space where I could finally heal. The peace lasted 2 years. It was broken by a Facebook post. My cousin, Ashlyn, came to visit. She was the only one from that side of the family I still spoke to, mostly because she, too, was an outsider. She was quiet, observant, and, unlike the rest of them, kind. She came to Fort Bragg for a weekend, and it coincided with a small award ceremony at the academy. I was receiving a commendation for the new training curriculum I'd developed. After the ceremony, Ashlyn was buzzing. "Kira, you look amazing," she said, holding up her phone. "Can I take a picture? You in that uniform with the award. It's just, wow." I was in my Class A uniform, the formal dark blue ASU, the Army Service uniform. It's the one we wear for official ceremonies, the one that looks sharp, professional, and impressive. With my new Sergeant First Class rank on the sleeve and the commendation ribbon on my chest, I stood straight and let her take the picture. "You have to post this," she said. "I'm so proud of you." I laughed. "Sure, Ashlyn, go for it. Just don't be surprised if it doesn't get much of a reaction." "Oh, whatever," she said, tapping away. "They need to see what you're doing." She posted it with a simple, genuine caption. "So proud of my cousin, Sergeant First Class Kira Hogan, receiving an award at Fort Bragg. Looking amazing." I thought nothing of it. Until my phone started to buzz. And buzz. And buzz. The picture had become, as the outline perfectly states, an intelligence report. My social media, which had been silent for 2 years, exploded. Aunts, uncles, distant relatives I hadn't heard from since I enlisted. All of them suddenly appeared in the comments. "Look at Kira. Wow, so impressive. Just like her mother, so dedicated." And then, the one that made my stomach drop. A comment from my mother, Karen. "Always so proud of our military girl. She works so hard. We miss you, honey." The hypocrisy was so thick I could barely breathe. 2 years of silence. 2 years of not answering my texts. 2 years since the read receipts on my deployment notice. And now, in public, she was always so proud. I didn't like it. I didn't reply. I just stared at it, a cold, familiar knot tightening in my chest. This wasn't pride. This was a probe. This was reconnaissance. The other shoe dropped an hour later. Ashlyn came into my kitchen, her face pale. "Kira," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I think I made a mistake." "What's wrong?" After I posted that picture, Ashley started texting my mom. And then, Ashley texted me. I think she thought I was on her side. Ashlyn was visibly shaking. She sent me this. She told me to ask you about it." "Kira, I'm so sorry. I think she's in serious trouble." She handed me her phone. I read the screenshot of the text message Ashley had sent to her own mother and then forwarded to Ashlyn. My blood turned to ice. It read, "Did you see the picture of Kira? She looks really stable. The pay for a sergeant first class plus her BAH in Bragg must be really high. You know I'm having legal trouble with that stupid MLM lawsuit. They're going to settle, but I need money up front. Mom, you need to call her. You need to ask her if she can support the situation. She's family. She owes us this." I had to read it twice. Bah. Basic allowance for housing. A specific, calculated amount. Stable. She owes us this. I handed the phone back to Ashlyn, my hands perfectly steady. "It's okay, Ashlyn," I said, my voice calm. It was the calm I used on the firing range. "This isn't your fault. You just confirmed my intelligence." What does that mean?" she asked. "It means they're not proud. They're prospecting," I said. "They don't see a daughter. They see an ATM." The cold feeling in my stomach wasn't sadness. It was the silent, chilling anger of confirmation. The toxic pattern, the one I had escaped, was not broken. It was just waiting. The next day, my phone rang. My mother. I let it ring twice, took a deep breath, and answered. "Hello? Kira? Oh, honey, it's so good to hear your voice." The voice was sweet, dripping with fake sugar. The voice she used when she wanted something. "Hi, Mom. I saw that picture Ashlyn posted. Oh, honey, you look so beautiful. So important. We are just so proud of you. I miss you so much." "I've been busy," I said, my voice flat, neutral. That was all it took. The sweetness vanished, replaced by the sound of a held-back sob. "Oh, Kira, I'm so glad I caught you. Things here are they're so hard. Your sister. Oh, poor Ashley. Here it comes," I thought. "Her business. It failed, Kira. She's lost so much money, and she's just trying so hard with the kids and all. And, well, family has to help family, you know? That's what families do." She didn't mention the lawsuit, just a vague failure. She was testing the waters, fishing for an opening. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. It was a non-committal statement. "Are you?" she pressed. "Because sorry doesn't help. We're talking about your sister, after everything we've done for you." "Mom," I cut her off, my voice still neutral. "I have a meeting. I have to go." "But Kira," I hung up. I didn't feel strong. I just felt tired. So incredibly tired. I leaned against my wall, the green, peaceful wall I'd painted, and closed my eyes. I texted Jackson. "Family made contact. Hostile intent suspected." His reply came back 2 minutes later. "You set a perimeter 2 years ago, Hogan. Hold the line." Hold the line. The main assault came that night. My phone lit up. The old Hogan family group chat, silent for 24 months, suddenly exploded. It was a message from my father. "We have booked our tickets. We are flying into Fayetteville. We will be there tomorrow at noon. The kids are so excited to see the Army base." I stared at the words. "We have booked. We will be there tomorrow." It wasn't a question. It wasn't an ask. It was an announcement of an invasion. They hadn't waited for my permission. They hadn't asked if I was busy. They had been rebuffed by my coldness, so they were skipping negotiation and going straight to a full frontal assault. They were going to show up on my doorstep and force my hand, counting on my old conditioned guilt to do the work. I thought of my little apartment, my home, my base of operations. I thought of Jackson's words. Hold the line. I squeezed the phone in my hand, my knuckles turning white. No, I whispered to the empty room. Not this time. This time they weren't cornering me in their backyard. They weren't calling me when I was vulnerable on the highway. This time they were advancing on my territory. And this time I would be the one setting the rules of engagement. The next day, at 11:58 a.m., my doorbell rang. I hadn't slept. I had spent the night cleaning my apartment, not out of hospitality, but like a soldier preparing a kill zone. Every piece of paper was filed, every personal item secured. My base of operations was on lockdown. I stood by the door for a full 10 seconds. I took a deep breath, recalling Jackson's words. Hold the line. I opened it. They didn't just arrive, they deplaned into my living room. My mother, Karen, rushed in first, pulling me into a hug that felt like an ambush. She smelled like hairspray and Chanel No. 5. "Oh, Kira," she cooed, pulling back. She didn't look at my face. Her eyes were already scanning the room, judging. "Oh, your apartment. It's so small. It's very compact." "It's what I need," I said, stepping back. My father, Mike, brushed past me without a word, already holding the TV remote he'd found on the coffee table. "Do you get ESPN?" he grunted, flopping onto my sofa. "The Buckeyes are on." The Ohio State Buckeyes. Of course. Then came Ashley, ushering her two screaming children, who were already sticky from whatever they'd eaten in the car. "Right, kids, this is Aunt Kira's place," she announced as if I wasn't there. "Go find the bathroom." They took off, running down my small hallway. Ashley dropped 3 oversized suitcases by the door, blocking the exit. The invasion was complete. In less than 60 seconds, my home, my sanctuary, was no longer mine. It was an occupied territory. Ashley walked around picking up my framed photos. "Cute," she said, before her eyes landed on my bedroom. I saw her glance in, her eyes narrowing, doing inventory, just as Dad had done with the TV. "It's not much, is it?" my father said, finally finding the game. "Not like our place back in Ohio." I ignored them. I was watching one of the kids, the boy. He had made a beeline for my wall of honor, the small bookshelf where I kept my awards and mementos. He was reaching for it, the one thing I truly valued. "Tanner, no," Ashley said, barely looking up from her phone. He giggled and grabbed it. It was a spent .50 caliber shell casing from my deployment in Afghanistan, mounted on a small wooden plaque, a memento for a friend who hadn't come home. My voice cut through the sound of the TV and the screaming. It wasn't a request, it was an order. "Put it down. Now." The room went silent. Even the TV seemed to fade. The boy froze, his hand still on the shell. "Kira, my God," Ashley snapped. "He's just a kid." I walked over, took the plaque from his hand, and placed it back on the shelf, my back to them. "In this house," I said, my voice low and cold, "we do not touch things that are not ours. That is the first and final rule." I turned around. All 3 of them were staring at me, mouths open. The shock was palpable. This was not the Kira they knew. This was not the doormat. "Well," my mother said, forcing a nervous laugh, "someone's changed." I met her gaze. "Yes, Mom, I have." The afternoon was a special kind of hell. They complained the Wi-Fi was slow. Ashley took a business call on my small balcony, her voice echoing through the complex. My father criticized my choice of coffee. For dinner, I refused to play the role of server they'd assigned me at the Memorial Day BBQ. I ordered Chinese takeout. We sat around my coffee table, eating sweet and sour pork out of white paper cartons. The financial interrogation began, right on schedule. "So, Ashley started, picking at her noodles. What's the pay for a sergeant first class like these days? Must be pretty good, right? It pays the bills, I said, my eyes on my food. And the BAH here, she pressed. That housing allowance? That must be high. I mean, this place is small, but it's yours. It's adequate, I said. My mother saw the opening. She's just so frugal, she chimed in, smiling at me. Always so responsible. That's our Kira. So stable. There it was, the word from the text message. Stable. I felt the trap tightening. Ashley put her fork down, and as if on cue, her eyes welled up with tears. It was a performance I'd seen 100 times. I'm so glad you're stable, Kira, she sniffled. Because I'm not. My life is falling apart. My father sighed and turned the TV volume down, annoyed. My business? That lawsuit, she cried. It's all a misunderstanding, but they're demanding $50,000. She looked at me, her eyes desperate but also calculating. Kira, with your good credit, your salary, you could easily get a loan, a $50,000 loan. You could co-sign. It would be nothing for you, just a signature. My mother put her hand on my arm. This is what family does, honey. We help each other. Your sister is in trouble. After everything we've sacrificed for you, that scholarship you gave up. I was silent. I just looked at them. The three of them, a united front, executing a planned maneuver. The air was thick with their expectation. Ashley tragically mistook my silence for consideration. She thought I was caving. Her tears dried up instantly. Her voice turned hard, arrogant. Stop thinking so hard about it, Kira. It's 50 grand. My business is real. I'm an entrepreneur. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a sneer, and delivered the final, fatal blow. You're not. You're just a pawn. A pawn paid by the government. She smiled, a cruel, thin smile. It's time for that pawn to finally do something useful. If you have ever been underestimated, called a pawn, or told your life wasn't real by someone who should have supported you, please show your support for this journey with a like. And I want to see your strength. Comment, I am not a pawn, down below. A pawn. The word hung in the air, heavy and toxic. In that single second, every act of service, every sacrifice, every lonely night on that U-Haul, every drop of sweat in my uniform. All of it was reduced to that one contemptuous word. I thought of Teddy Roosevelt's words, the ones I'd read at that truck stop. The man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. I was not a critic. I was not a spectator. And I was not a pawn. A strange, cold calm washed over me. The anger, the rage, the years of hurt, they all just evaporated, leaving behind nothing but absolute, ice-cold clarity. I finally saw them for what they were. I set my food container down. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father, who was impatiently waiting to turn the TV up. And then, I looked directly into Ashley's eyes. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just spoke, my voice as flat and final as a judgment. Mission not approved. The moment the words, mission not approved, left my lips, the living room detonated. It wasn't silence. It was chaos. Ashley lunged at me, screaming, her face purple with rage. You bitch! You selfish bitch! After everything we've done! My mother burst into the kind of hysterical sobs I knew so well, the ones designed to shatter all resistance. Kira, you're killing us! You're killing your sister! My father was on his feet, his face beet red, jabbing a finger at me. You ungrateful. I'll disown you. You think you're so big in that uniform? They were a storm, a three-pronged attack designed to shock and overwhelm. It didn't work. I just stood there, the cold, clear calm from before settling over me like body armor. I let the noise wash over me. I analyzed their tactics. Ashley was the assault element. Mom was psychological operations. Dad was the failed heavy artillery. They were predictable. I waited for Ashley to pause for breath. Then, I used my voice. Not my Kira voice. My sergeant first-class voice. The one that cuts across a firing range and makes privates freeze. Enough! It was so loud, so sharp, it physically threw them back. Ashley stopped, her mouth open. My mother's sobs hitched. My father actually took a step back. I stood at the position of attention, my hands not balled into fists, but relaxed at my sides. This discussion is over, I said, my voice now lethally quiet. We are not doing this tonight. You don't get to decide that, Ashley shrieked. I just did, I said. We will be having a formal meeting. Tomorrow morning. 09. In this living room. My mother sniffled. A meeting? What are you talking about? I am talking, I said, about an after-action review, an AAR. We are going to review the facts of this situation, and we will reach a final conclusion. 09. Be ready. I didn't wait for a reply. I turned, walked into my bedroom, and shut the door. I heard them start to yell again, but it was muffled. I locked the deadbolt. My perimeter was secure. That night, I did not sleep. They thought they had me cornered. They thought that by morning, I would have broken down, overwhelmed by guilt, and ready to sign the loan papers. They were wrong. I was gathering intelligence. I sat on my bed, my laptop open. First, I called Jackson. He picked up on the second ring, his voice gravelly with sleep. Hogan, you okay? I kept my voice low. They're here. The invasion force has landed. I gave him the short version, the demand for $50,000, the pawn comment. There was a long silence. Kira, he said, and his voice was cold now too. Hold the line. You built that perimeter. You hold it. I am, I said. But I feel like I'm missing a piece of intel. It's too desperate. It's not just $50,000. It never is, he said. Be careful. They'll aim below the belt. Don't let them. Roger that, I said. Thanks, Jackson. You've got this, SFC. Call me if you need extraction. I smiled. Wilco. I hung up. Next, I opened my messages. I texted the one person who was an outside observer, my cousin, Ashlyn. My hands were steady as I typed. Ashlyn. I need intel, and I need it now. You mentioned Ashley was in legal trouble. I need to know exactly what it is. Not the family story, the real story. It's important. My phone buzzed 2 minutes later. Ashlyn was a night owl. Her reply was a screenshot of an email. My blood ran cold. It wasn't a simple civil lawsuit from an angry MLM customer. It was a cease and desist letter from a U.S. attorney's office. The email used phrases like interstate wire fraud, federal investigation, and potential criminal charges. She wasn't just being sued for $50K. She was being investigated by the federal government. She hadn't just lied to her customers, she had lied to everyone. I leaned back against my wall, the pieces clicking into place with a horrifying metallic snap. This wasn't about saving her business. This was about jail time. And then I saw the true target. They didn't just need my good credit, they needed me. A sergeant first class with a spotless record and an active top-secret security clearance. They needed a scapegoat. They weren't just asking me to co-sign a loan. They were asking me to tie my career, my clearance, my entire future to a woman being investigated for wire fraud. They were willing to sacrifice my life to save hers. The last bit of daughter in me died in that moment. I turned back to my laptop. My first instinct was to write a letter. A long, tear-stained letter pouring out 29 years of pain. I stopped. No, that's what Kira would do. Sergeant First Class Hogan does not write emotional letters. She builds a case. I closed my word processor. And I opened PowerPoint. My movements were precise. I chose the simplest, most professional template. Black text, white background. The title slide was simple. Hogan Family, AAR, Cost-Benefit Analysis. I started a new slide. Subject, Kira Hogan's contributions. I didn't write paragraphs. I wrote bullet points. 2010, declined $200,000 Notre Dame ROTC scholarship for family crisis. A. Miller, DUI. 2012, Fort Jackson BCT graduation. Family arrival 4 hours late. Reason, A. Miller relationship argument. 2019, Christmas. Drove 14 hours in blizzard, Fort Drum, NY, to conduct inventory for A. Miller's MLM business. I added another slide. Subject, family recognition and support. 2022, promotion to sergeant first class. Family response, ignored. Ref, Memorial Day, BBQ. 2022, PCS orders to Fort Bragg. Family response, silence. Ref, group text. I worked for hours. I was no longer a daughter, a sister, or a pawn. I was an analyst, a briefer, preparing for the most important presentation of my life. I was objective. I was factual. I was cold. At 06, 1D sows, as the first gray light hit my window, I was done. I shut the laptop. I stood up, my back stiff. I made my coffee, black. I walked to my dresser. I didn't put on jeans. I didn't put on a t-shirt. I pulled out my standard issue Army PT uniform, the black t-shirt with Army in gold letters, the black shorts. I pulled my hair back into a tight regulation bun. I looked in the mirror. It wasn't Kira, the daughter, who looked back. It was Sergeant First Class Hogan. And she was ready for the review. I picked up my laptop, walked into the living room, and plugged the HDMI cable into my TV. I was calm, I was focused, and I was, in that moment, quietly dangerous. At 08:55, I heard them stirring. They emerged from the guest room and my sofa, blinking, puffy-eyed, and smelling like stale sleep. My mother was already trying to start her manipulative routine. Kira, honey, about last night, I think we were all just tired. I didn't look up from my coffee. 5 minutes. What? 09. 5 minutes. Have a seat on the sofa, I said, motioning with my cup. They looked confused, angry, but my cold professional tone left no room for argument. They sat. Ashley crossed her arms, sulking. My father looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. My mother looked nervous. At 09, on the dot, I stood up. I was in my Army PT uniform, a physical symbol that this was not a family chat. This was a briefing. Good morning, I said. We are here to conduct an after-action review regarding yesterday's request for financial support. I clicked the first slide. The TV screen lit up, the black text stark against the white background. Mission: evaluate request for $50,000 financial support. What the hell is this? Ashley hissed. This, I said, is the meeting I called. We are going to review the facts. Please hold all questions until the end. My mother looked at my father, bewildered. Mike, she's made slides. Quiet, Karen, my father grumbled, suddenly paying attention. I clicked to the next slide. Asset history. Support from Kira Hogan to Hogan family. Classification, cost-benefit analysis. Asset, my mother whispered, horrified. I ignored her and began the briefing, my voice as steady and detached as if I were briefing a colonel. We will begin with a review of historical support, I said. I clicked. A single bullet point appeared. Item 1, 2010. Declined full ride, 4-year ROTC scholarship to the University of Notre Dame. O value, approx. $200,000. O reason, stated, family crisis. Ref, A. Miller, DUI charge. The silence in the room was absolute. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide. 200,000, she stammered. Kira, it wasn't that much. It was, Mom, I said, not looking at her. I have the tuition statements from that year. The scholarship covered full tuition plus books and stipend. The total value was just over $200,000. I declined it to stay in Ohio and attend a state school, per your request. My father was just staring at the screen. He knew the value of Notre Dame. He knew what that meant. I clicked again. Item 2, 2012. U.S. Army Basic Training Graduation, Fort Jackson, SC. O. Action. Family arrival, 4 hours late. O. Reason. A. Miller, relationship dispute. O. Result. No family present for official ceremony. That's not fair, Ashley snapped. I was going through a breakup. Duly noted, Ashley, I said. The data is simply the data. I clicked again. Item 3, 2019, Christmas leave. O action. K. Hogan drove 14 hours, blizzard conditions. Ref, Fort Drum, NY to Columbus, OH. O purpose, conduct 3-day inventory, count for A. Miller's MLM business. O result, K. Hogan missed unit holiday party. A. Miller attended New Year's Eve party. You're twisting everything, Ashley yelled, jumping to her feet. I didn't even look at her. I just raised my hand, palm out, in the universal stop signal. Sergeant First Class Hogan is briefing, I said, my voice dropping an octave. You will sit down, and you will hold your questions until the end. Ashley's mouth snapped shut. The sheer cold authority in my voice shocked her into compliance. She sat down, her face burning. I turned back to the screen and clicked to the next slide. History of reciprocal support, recognition, classification, morale, and welfare. Item 1, 2022. Promotion, Sergeant First Class. O family acknowledgement, ignored. Ref, Memorial Day, BBQ. O competing event, A. Miller, $500 dropshipping sale. Item 2, 2022. Official PCS orders, Fort Bragg. O family acknowledgement, silence. Ref, group text. O competing event, K. Hogan, photo of cornbread. This is insane, Ashley whispered. You're insane. You're reading a ledger. What kind of person does this? I do, I said. A person who is tired of the facts being ignored. Which brings us to the present. I clicked the slide. This was the one. Current situation report, sit rep and risk assessment. A sit rep? My father muttered, confused. The request yesterday was for $50,000 to settle a lawsuit, I said, my voice clinical. That data was inaccurate. The target amount is incorrect, and the nature of the threat has been misidentified. I clicked again. A screenshot of the email from Ashlyn filled the screen. I read the keyline out loud. Multiple complaints filed with the U.S. Attorney's Office, pending federal investigation into interstate wire fraud. My mother let out a small, strangled gasp. My father went white. He turned, his eyes bulging, to look at Ashley. Wire fraud, federal? That's a lie, Ashley screamed, but her voice was shrill with panic. Ashlyn, you talked to that. I am presenting the data, Ashley, I said. The request is not for $50,000 to settle a lawsuit. The actual situation is that you are being investigated by the federal government for a felony, and you need a co-signer to drain funds for your legal defense, likely by attaching their assets to your case. I turned to face them, the remote in my hand. You didn't come here for help. You came here for a scapegoat. I looked at my mother and father. You were willing to ask me, a sergeant first class with a top-secret security clearance, to financially tie myself to a federal wire fraud investigation. You were willing to sacrifice my entire 29-year life, my career, and my future to protect her. My mother just sobbed. We didn't know. She said. It doesn't matter, I said. I clicked the remote. The TV screen went black. The briefing was over. You, I said, pointing the remote at Ashley, thought my career was a pawn. You thought I was a joke. You were wrong. You didn't miscalculate the cost. You misread the entire chessboard. Kira, please, my mother begged. I looked at her. You called me cold. You're wrong. I am not cold. I am clear. For the first time in my life, I am perfectly clear. I walked to the front door and opened it. The bright North Carolina morning spilled into the room. The meeting is adjourned, I said. I looked at the three of them, huddled on my sofa, finally speechless. You have 30 minutes to pack your bags and get off my base. I stood at the open door for a long time, listening to the sound of their suitcases scraping down the apartment breezeway. I heard the slam of a car door, the squeal of tires as my father sped out of the parking lot, and then silence. A silence so heavy and profound it felt like a physical weight. I closed the door. The click of the deadbolt sliding into place sounded deafeningly final. I turned and looked at my living room. It was a wreck. Paper takeout cartons were scattered on the coffee table. The sofa cushions were displaced. The whole room smelled like stale sweet and sour pork, and the faint, lingering aroma of my mother's perfume. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt empty. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, my arms wrapped around my knees, still in my PT uniform. I was exhausted, right down to my bones. The adrenaline from the confrontation, the hours of strategic preparation, the years of repressed anger. It all drained out of me at once, leaving a hollow space behind. I didn't cry. I had no tears left for them. This wasn't the agonizing emptiness of loss, the kind I'd felt at the BBQ. This was a different kind of void. It was the sterile, quiet emptiness of a battlefield after the fight is over. It was the emptiness of a room that has been cleared out to make space for something new. I had held the line. I had defended my perimeter. And now, for the first time, I was truly, completely alone. The silence lasted for about 10 minutes. Then, my phone buzzed on the counter where I'd left it. I watched it. It buzzed again and again. A frantic, angry vibration. It was the sound of the counter-offensive. I slowly stood up, my joints aching, and walked over to it. The screen was a wall of notifications. The flying monkeys had been activated. My mother must have called her sisters the second they got in the car. First, the primary attackers. My mother. You have destroyed this family. You have killed me, Kira. I hope you're happy. You are no daughter of mine. My father. Don't you ever, ever contact us again. You ungrateful, cold-hearted brat. All that army training did was make you a monster. Ashley. You're a sociopath. I'm going to be homeless because of you. I hope you're proud of yourself. You're a cold, dead-inside bitch. Then, the air support. The extended family who hadn't spoken to me in years. Aunt Carol. Kira, I am shocked. Your mother is hysterical. How dare you treat her like that? Family is everything. Uncle Mark. You need to apologize to your parents right now. You've forgotten where you came from. You think you're better than us now with that uniform? An unknown number, probably another aunt. You are a cold, ungrateful child. We are all praying for you. The messages kept coming. A barrage of guilt, shame, and accusations. I stood there and I read every single one. I read the words ungrateful, monster, cold, sociopath. And the strangest thing happened. I felt nothing. The words didn't sting. The accusations didn't land. They were just noise. The desperate, predictable noise of a failed operation. I saw the pattern. The gaslighting. The guilt-tripping. The victim-blaming. It was the same playbook they had run on me my entire life. But this time, I wasn't the target. I was the analyst. I saw my mother's text. You have killed me. And I didn't feel guilt. I just felt tired. So incredibly tired. I tapped on the Hogan family group chat, the one that had been silent for 2 years and then exploded in my face. I looked at the string of angry messages. My old self, the fixer, would have replied, would have defended herself, would have sent screenshots, data, evidence. My old self would have re-entered the arena for another pointless round. I didn't do that. I didn't block them. That felt too angry, too reactive. I simply hit chat details. I scrolled down. And I toggled the switch. Mute notifications. I did the same for my aunts, and my uncle, and Ashley. I was severing the connection, not with anger, but with finality. I was cutting off the signal from their toxic command center. I was initiating radio silence. I set the phone down on the counter, screen side down. I walked to my closet, pulled on my running shoes, and grabbed my apartment key. I left the phone, the noise, and the stale smell of Chinese food behind. I walked out my front door and into the bright, clean North Carolina air. And I just started running. I ran for miles, deep into the familiar pine forests that surround Fort Bragg. The trails were soft under my feet, the air sharp with the smell of pine sap and damp earth. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like lead. Then I slowed to a walk, breathing hard, the sweat cooling on my skin. I was alone. truly alone, no family, no safety net. I had built my life around serving my country, serving my unit, and serving my family. I had spent my entire life trying to be useful, the good daughter, the strong one, the fixer, the pawn. And for what? To be told my service wasn't real? To be called a monster for finally saying no? I thought about forgiveness. The word felt heavy and strange. I realized walking under those tall pines that forgiveness wasn't my job right now. My job wasn't to absolve them. It wasn't to make them feel better. My job was just to live. I had given 29 years of service to them. From now on, I was in service to my own peace. A small smile touched my lips. I thought of Teddy Roosevelt's words, the ones that had become my new creed. Whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood. I had been in the arena. I had fought. I'd been slandered by the critics on the sidelines, my family. But as I stood there in the quiet woods, feeling the first real, shaky breath of freedom, I knew one thing. At least I did not fail while daring greatly. I wasn't a pawn. I was the person in the arena. I felt serene. But as I turned to head back, one image pricked that serenity. The look on my mother's face when the wire fraud slide appeared. It wasn't just anger. It was terror. It wasn't guilt. It was just a lingering sting, a loose thread, a final piece of intel that still felt unresolved. The loose thread, that image of my mother's terror, stayed with me. It wasn't guilt, as I'd told myself. It was just an unresolved piece of the mission, a file left open. But for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to fix it. I didn't feel the need to charge back in. I had muted the notifications. I had silenced the radio, and I let the silence stretch. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. 6 months passed. Life settled into a new rhythm. A rhythm I had never known before. Peace. It was a quiet, steady beat. The 05:30 alarm for PT. The smell of hot coffee and pine trees in the North Carolina morning. The drive to the NCO Academy at Fort Bragg, where I taught leadership to new sergeants. My work had meaning. When I spoke, my soldiers listened. When I gave an order, it was respected. When I corrected a flaw in their tactical plan, they didn't call me cold. They called me Sergeant First Class. I had a life. It wasn't a life built on service to anyone. It was just a life. My apartment, my base of operations, felt like home. The walls were my own, decorated with my achievements and photos of my new family, my unit, my soldiers, and Jackson. Jackson. Our relationship had grown, slowly, quietly, with the kind of respect you can only find between two people who have seen the worst and are actively choosing the good. There was no drama, no manipulation. Some nights we'd grill steaks on the small patio behind his house. Other nights, we'd just sit on the porch, reading, not needing to fill the silence. He never pushed. He never demanded. He just existed, alongside me. And in that quiet, respectful space he gave me, I had the most profound realization of my life. My entire childhood, my value had been tied to my usefulness. I was the fixer, the babysitter, the ATM, the pawn. My worth was defined by what I could do for others. But sitting on that porch with Jackson, I realized my value wasn't in my usefulness at all. It was just in my existence. I was worthy of peace simply because I was me. That, I learned, was the foundation of healing. One Saturday in spring, Jackson took me to a barbecue. It wasn't like the one at my parents' house. This one was at a local VFW post, a gathering for his vets group. Other Green Berets, Rangers, infantry guys. They were older, scarred, and they laughed loud. They welcomed me instantly, not as Jackson's girlfriend, but as Sergeant First Class Hogan. They passed me a beer, they handed me a plate piled high with pulled pork, and we just talked. We told stories, the kind you can't tell civilians. We talked about the absurdities of command, the taste of MREs, the feeling of a Black Hawk touching down. I found myself opening up, telling them a sanitized version of my home front battle. I told them about the PowerPoint. One of them, an old command sergeant major with a prosthetic leg, just nodded. his eyes full of a wisdom that chilled me. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Hogan," he said, his voice gravelly. "We all fight two wars, the one overseas and the one when we come back." He looked around the circle of scarred men. "And sometimes the hardest battle, the one that takes the most from you, is the one you fight at home." I looked around that circle of men. They were all nodding. They knew. They saw me. They didn't demand anything. They didn't ask me to fix anything. They just shared their food and their stories. And as I sat there, laughing as Jackson argued with a Marine about the best way to smoke a brisket, I knew. This was it. This was family. The loose thread finally resolved itself on a quiet Tuesday evening. I was home, grading papers, when my phone rang. An unknown number from an Ohio area code. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through from the same number. "Kira, it's Mom. Please pick up. It's not about money." My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. I just felt calm. I called the number back. Her voice was small, thin, and trembling. All the authority, the manipulation, the gaslighting, it was gone. "Kira? I'm here, Mom." She started to cry, not the loud theatrical sobs Ashley used, but a broken, exhausted weeping. It's over," she whispered. "Ashley, she pleaded guilty to the wire fraud. She took a plea deal. She's awaiting sentencing, Kira." I said nothing. I just listened. I, she choked. "I'm sorry. Oh God, Kira, I'm so sorry. For everything." It was the apology I'd waited my entire life to hear. The words I'd ached for at the BBQ, at my graduation, in that lonely U-Haul. And now that it was here, I realized it didn't matter. It wasn't a magic key. It didn't unlock some hidden well of forgiveness. It didn't erase the scars. It was just words from a sad, broken woman. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel joy. I just felt a calm acknowledgement. "I hear you, Mom," I said, and my voice was kind but firm. Will you come home?" she asked, her voice full of a desperate, broken hope. Before I took a breath. I thought of the boundary I had drawn. "No," she flinched. "I hear you," I said again gently. "And I appreciate the call. But I need time, Mom. A lot of time. And any future relationship we have, it will be on my terms. I'm not the fixer anymore. I can't be." I was clear. I was concise. I was not cruel. I was just done. "I need you to respect that," I said. She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she just whispered, Okay, Kira. I understand." I had taken control of the dialogue. I had set the terms of engagement. "I have to go, Mom." "I love you," she whispered. I paused. "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up. I put the phone down, and I continued grading my papers. The mission was, finally, complete. That weekend, I was with Jackson, sitting on his back porch. He had built it himself, and it overlooked a quiet stretch of the Cape Fear River. The North Carolina sunset was painting the sky in violent, beautiful shades of orange and purple. We sat in comfortable silence, the only sound the chirping of crickets and the clink of ice in our glasses of sweet tea. Jackson looked over at me, a soft smile on his face. "You're 1,000 miles away. What's on your mind, Sergeant First Class?" I smiled, looking out at the water. I thought about the BBQ, the PowerPoint, the phone call. I took a deep, slow breath. And I realized for the first time in my memory that my shoulders weren't tense. My jaw wasn't clenched. My lungs weren't tight. "I was just thinking," I said, the words coming out slowly. For the first time in my entire life, I'm not holding my breath anymore. I had lived my whole life braced for the next impact, waiting for the next order, the next criticism, the next demand, the next mission not approved. Waiting. I looked at Jackson. I looked at the peaceful river. And I let the air fill my lungs all the way. I was free. I smiled, and this time, it was all mine. I can finally breathe. I can finally breathe. Thank you for listening to my story. This journey from being the invisible fixer to finding my own voice was the hardest mission I've ever had. But I'm here, and I'm not holding my breath anymore. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to the channel for more stories of strength and survival. I know I'm not alone in this fight. In the comments, I'd be honored if you'd share one thing. What is the name of one person in your chosen family who truly sees you?